जब चूड़ी के काम पे बैठे सुबह से 8 से लेकर रात के 11 बजे तक काम करते थे, तब केमिकल्स पूरा मेरा मुंह जला हुआ था।
The pandemic is not just taking lives, but also worsening the plight of some of India's most vulnerable children.
Children are being forced to drop out of school, they are forced to get into work. This entire issue of children being impacted by COVID, we are looking at a sea of broken children. There's also a massive child traffickers network.
तुम लोग को साले लपड़ियां देना दिमाग सही हो जाए बात करते हो।
The cases of child trafficking, abuse and exploitation are on the rise, pushing many children to the brink of danger.
Every child who's out of school, every child who's begging, every child who's ever been a victim of any violence is an example of failure of state.
Can India safeguard its children affected by COVID-19?
देखिए क्या बदबू है, कैसे बच्चे काम करते हैं।
I've come here only to share the voices and dreams of our children. I have looked into their frightened and exhausted eyes. I've held their injured bodies and I have felt their broken spirits. There is no greater violence than to deny the dreams of our children.
माँ ही मुझे कहलाता है, माँ ही बड़ा किया, माँ का बिना नहीं रह सकता हूँ मैं, अकेला घर कैसे जाऊँ मैं।
On 29th June 2021, in a dramatic police raid, 10-year-old Shabuddin was one of 16 children rescued from a Delhi-bound train. 12 traffickers were arrested for luring the children with money to work in a garment factory as cheap labor.
फूफा लेकर आया था साथ में दिल्ली सीलमपुर कारखाना है, उसका काम सिखवाने ले आया था। पहली हमारा घर पर बहुत मजबूरी है, हमारा पापा गुजर गया है, सहारा कोई नहीं है, सिर्फ मैं हूँ।
Following the rescue, Shabuddin, along with the other children, have been housed in Mukti Ashram, a boys' home in the capital city. The home provides a temporary secure shelter away from the snares of traffickers and criminal gangs.
अम्मी क्या कुछ काम नहीं करती है, घर में बैठा रहती है कि कोई पैसा नहीं देती है, रोता है, मांग चांग कर खाता है, खेत पर काम कर लोग कर खाता है, हम लोग को खिलाता है, पोस पाल कर बड़ा कर अब हम कमा कर माँ को खिलाएंगे।
Shabuddin is the oldest in the family and has 6 siblings. He lost his father just a few months ago, leaving his mother distraught and struggling to feed the family.
जमीन जगह रहता तो मैं यहाँ क्या करने के लिए आता, बरब्बा उरब्बा पैसा देता तो मैं यहाँ क्या करने के लिए आता, गाँव में ही बैठ कर खाता।
Though only 10 years old, Shah was compelled to work to bring in the much-needed income for the family. An acquaintance from his village in Bihar, whom he calls uncle, lured him and his mother with the promise of a job that would pay well. He left home with this uncle, only to have his dream of a better life transformed into a nightmare.
रात 12 बजे में ट्रेन पकड़ा था। 24 घंटा तक यहाँ लेकर आया, आनंद विहार स्टेशन में पकड़ लिया। फूफा का बेटा उधर चला गया, फूफा उधर चला गया, फूफा छूट गया। मैं अकेला यहाँ हूँ, हमारा गाँव का कोई नहीं है। डर लग रहा था, टीटी जो आया था, पुलिस आता था, डर लग रहा था। खुद नहीं गया, हमारा अम्मी सब धमकी दे, हमरो अम्मी सब कहीं बेवा बेला, हमरो अम्मी कहीं हम कहीं अम्मी चुबा गए, मरने पड़ गए, मक्का में खिला दूँ में गए। अम्मी बोले बस अम्मी हमरा चुबा दे, अम्मी सब बेझगड़ा करे यार, अकनी की बोले ये ना मनी मालूम नहीं जा।
Every child who's on the street is a manifestation of failure of state. Every child who's out of school, every child who's begging, every child who's ever been a victim of any violence, sexual or otherwise, is an example of failure of state.
India had just about survived COVID's first wave early this year when the deadly second wave struck. A crumbling healthcare system struggled to firefight an unprecedented medical crisis. The overwhelming demand for oxygen left hundreds of thousands of people gasping for a puff of air and dying, just waiting in vain to get a hospital bed.
In the second phase, we were not prepared for the kind of onslaught of the virus that we saw in terms of the kind of medical crisis it had created. It was like almost like a tsunami wave that just hit us. It was a huge systemic failure.
As the disaster unfolded like a menacing tale of horror decimating lives by the thousands, something more sinister was simmering beneath the surface of the medical crisis and preparing to target India's most vulnerable, children like Shabuddin.
COVID has aggravated the problems of the children. In India, nearly 35 million children are said to be the children in need of care and protection.
Bye, Babu.
There are nearly 20 million children who are said to be outside family support. They have either no parents or family or legal guardian to support, or even if they have, they are not in a position to look after them, 20 million of them.
Now, pandemic has caused millions of job losses, has destroyed families, has caused deaths of unparalleled scale. Now, what this kind of vulnerability does is it makes a ground fertile on both sides for the traffickers to exploit that vulnerability of the families and the children, and for the families who are left with no choice but to push their children to labor, to begging, which often become victims of trafficking.
In India, one child goes missing every 8 minutes. Millions end up as bonded laborers or sex slaves.
अभी जो ट्रैफिकर है वो ज़्यादातर वो गांव के आसपास का होता है, उसको पूरा वहाँ की जो वस्तु स्थिति है, जो हालात हैं, उसके बारे में सारा पता होता है। तो ऐसे सिचुएशन में वो टारगेट करता है ऐसे फैमिली को। फिर ये पूरा सप्लाई चेन है। अब सप्लाई चेन में वहाँ लोकल आदमी से भी वो कनेक्ट है कि एक आदमी है जो उसको आइडेंटिफाई करके ये बता रहा है कि ये फैमिली है, वर्नेबल है, इसके बच्चे हैं, इनको ले जाया जा सकता है। तो और सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ ये होती है कि लोगों को पैसे की ज़रूरत है और वो एडवांस में पहले देते थे 1000 रुपये, अब वो 10,000 या 15,000 रुपये दे देते हैं। तो वो एक तरीके से 1 साल के लिए उस बच्चे को बॉन्डेड बना लेते हैं।
Child trafficking worsened due to the impact of COVID-19 as the pandemic pushed millions to a state of utter destitution. It was a perfect hunting ground for traffickers who could ensnare the poor with enticements of money. It is how Shahabuddin's mother was duped to send him to Delhi. Shah is believed to be among some 9,000 children trafficked for labour between April 2020 and June 2021.
The child has been taken
to Delhi.
This is quite a dangerous area. We have been attacked there 2 times.
Bachpan Bachao Andolan, or BBA, is an NGO founded by Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyarthi. The organisation has been following tip-offs from field investigators and undertaking raids on trains and buses along routes believed to be used by criminals. During the pandemic, traffickers have constantly been adjusting their modus operandi to evade law enforcement officials. This has made the task of identifying victims of human trafficking a daunting challenge.
The buses in which the children were traveling, they were taking longer routes, changing the buses. So they were always trying to how to traffic the children to the destination. The bus which started from Bihar was changed in midway.
Traffickers use tactics to hoodwink officials, but the team at BBA, headed by Dhananjay Tingle, is adept at tracking them down. An undercover investigation has revealed that children have been trafficked and employed illegally in a factory in East Delhi. The task force that Dhananjay has set up is helping map out a plan to conduct a raid.
टोटल 4 है, 3, 1, 2।
तो एक पॉइंट पे आप कौन जाएगा?
1, 3, 2 हमने देखा, चारों हमने और जय ने देखे हैं।
हाँ, अगर ये कुछ कंपनियों को नाम दिखे तो जो भी कुछ हो, जो सबूत हो
ले लिया जाएगा। टोटल 4 है।
We have our teams which are functioning in the areas which are source districts. We are functioning in 10 districts. We have a very intensive program which we have launched there, which has been created where the survivors of trafficking and child labor are leading it, gathering information of the children being trafficked. So once the information comes, our teams who are involved in rescue operations become active. कितना दूर है इस पॉइंट से ये?
सर 20 कदम।
50 मीटर?
दोनों?
हाँ,
तीनों, हाँ?
सब मिला के सारे। एकदम कुछ नहीं, बहुत इजी लोकेशन है, बहुत सही है।
चलो प्लेस के आइए, गाड़ी में बैठिए आप लोग।
सर मैं प्रयास चाइल्डलाइन से बात कर रही हूँ सोनिया। सर आपको किस प्रकार की हेल्प चाहिए? हेलो, अच्छा
ठीक है सर, हम जल्द से जल्द वहाँ पर पहुँचे। आप बच्चे के साथ वहीं मौजूद।
ठीक है सर, आप चिंता ना करें, हमारी टीम आप तक पहुँच रही है। हेलो जी, नमस्कार, मैं प्रयास चाइल्डलाइन नॉर्थ से बात कर रहा हूँ। क्या सहायता कर सकता हूँ मैं आपकी? बताइए सूरज जी। अच्छा, आपके पास 2 बच्चे हैं और आप उनके चाचा हैं। उनके पिताजी की कोविड-19 के दौरान मृत्यु हो गई है। ठीक है सूरज जी, ठीक है।
The first wave largely affected the people who are 50 plus, so sort of the grandparents. The second wave, largely the parental generation got affected, and that in turn adversely affected the children far more than the first wave.
78954954.
During the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, between March and June 2020, India's child helpline 1098 received nearly 400,000 calls about children in distress across the country. A year later, during the devastating second wave, the 24-hour service witnessed 40 to 50% rise in call volumes, averaging 5,000 per day.
One of the most heartbreaking moments was the sheer number of calls that we had received during second surge of the COVID wave, in which we learned about children losing parents. In one particular instance, there were 2 children inside a home with the dead bodies of their parents next to them, and they were calling for cremation help. And no child deserves to suffer through the crisis or the trauma of having to cremate their parents. In another instance, we got a call from this particular child and his mother. They were sitting in crematorium and asking for help about expediting their process, as they had been waiting for about 7 odd hours. In another, one of the neighbors called us, in which the neighbor said that the 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl, who lost both the parents, and now the younger, the boy, wants to commit suicide.
पापा के साथ ही रहता था। मंदिर वंदिर कहीं पर भी जाना होता था तो मैं भी जाता था।
वहीं से बुआ के साथ होली खेल के आए थे रात में। लास्ट टाइम हम घूमने बुआ के गए हैं।
On April 18th earlier this year, Sakshi and Shivam's father took ill suddenly and developed a low-grade fever. An RT-PCR test revealed that he had contracted COVID, but he couldn't get admitted into a hospital. It was during the height of COVID's second wave, when the nation was facing a huge shortage of oxygen and hospital beds. So the children's father stayed home and took medicines for fever. But 4 days later, his health deteriorated.
वो मेरे पापा यहाँ सोते थे और हम यहाँ सोते थे, और दवाई हम ला के देते थे उन्हें, और गर्म पानी थे खिलाते थे गर्म पानी करके। और फिर जिस दिन तबीयत खराब हुई तो उस दिन मेरे चाचा ने एम्बुलेंस बुलाई थी, तो उनको रात में एडमिट करके आए थे हॉस्पिटल में।
देख लीजिए, आपको 1% चांस है। मैं कहा जी जैसे भी आप भगवान भरोसे, आप ट्रीटमेंट जो भी देंगे दीजिए आप। तो वहाँ पे चौथे दिन लगभग रात को फ़ोन आता है मेरे पास।
3:30 बजे करीब फ़ोन आया कि इन्होंने बताया ये शिवम गया था नीचे। मेरे को लगा मजाक कर रहा है, बाद में पता चला। फिर ये ताऊ बाऊ चाचा वाचा सब गए, शिवम भी गया था। फिर मेरी बहन को छोड़ने आए लोग, फिर दोबारा गए, तब जाके वहाँ से शमशान घाट गए।
It was a long wait as the crematoriums were full, and Sakshi could only get a glimpse of her dad.
लास्ट टाइम तो इन लोगों ने देखा हमने, हम हॉस्पिटल में मिलकर आए थे। शमशान घाट में इतना जाने नहीं दे पा रहे थे।
आपने कोशिश करी पापा को देखने के लिए?
दूर था बहुत।
पापा मिस कर रहे हो ना? कैसे?
डांटना जैसे वो बोलते थे।
The children's mother became estranged from the family and left when Shivam and Sakshi were merely 1 and 3 years old. With the death of their father, they lost the only parent they had.
पूरे टाइम मेरे पापा ने हमारे को पाला है, हमारे को माँ का प्यार भी उन्होंने ही दिया है।
the extended family banded together to discuss their future. One of the uncles, 41-year-old Ravi Gupta, decided to take the two children under his wing.
तो मेरे पास जब से रह रहे हैं, कुल मिलाकर के खाना पीना जो भी है, अब कोई नहीं है तो भाई मेरे पास ही है। इस तरह से और फाइनेंशियल स्थिति तो मेरी भी कमज़ोरी है। जो बात है कि मैं भी सिलाई का ही काम करता हूँ, कोई बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस भी नहीं है। प्लस मेरे को किसी एनजीओ से कॉल आया था, अगर आप बच्चों को रखने में समर्थ नहीं हैं तो आप बच्चे कहीं बाहर भी रख पा सकते हैं। तो मैंने कहा जी नहीं, बच्चे मेरी तरफ रहते हैं तो ये बाहर नहीं रह पाएंगे, कहीं अकेले रोएंगे और परेशान होंगे और ये मेरे साथ ही रहेंगे। जैसा रूखा सूखा मैं खाता हूँ वैसे ही मेरे बच्चे ये साथ में खाएंगे। जैसी परवरिश मैं अपने बच्चों को दे रहा हूँ वैसे ही इनको दूंगा।
Ravi is a tailor and earns around $8 a day. He has 2 kids of his own, but now he faces a double burden as he's also taking care of the orphaned children. But Ravi is determined to support the children, though this means a huge strain on his finances.
अब जैसे मैं कहीं रहूँगा उस हिसाब से मैं रख पाऊँगा, तो कुछ इन बच्चों के लिए एजुकेशन के लिए, रहने के लिए, कुछ अच्छा परवरिश के लिए कुछ हेल्प हो सके तो अच्छी बात है।
Like Sakshi and Shivam, there were over 101,000 children who were orphaned or abandoned due to COVID between April 2020 and August 2021, according to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a slew of benefits for children orphaned during COVID-19. It includes free education and a specially designed scheme to create a corpus of $13,000 for each of the orphaned children that they can receive as a lump sum when they are 23 years old. But experts say that the focus on COVID orphans, a phrase that was widely used during the second wave, is problematic.
When we are looking at children's vulnerability, we need to understand as civil society, as governments, as policy makers, that we just cannot concentrate on one chosen vulnerability of children as COVID orphans.
It stigmatizes one set of children who for the rest of their life will now have to go around proving that they were orphaned by COVID and therefore become eligible for certain benefits that the government has promised to them. At the same time, it invisibilizes thousands and thousands of other children who are becoming vulnerable every day.
Social media posts calling for people to adopt children orphaned during the pandemic went viral, creating an alarm amongst child rights experts. Targeting orphaned children as being the most vulnerable who require urgent help exposes them to a far greater hazard.
COVID orphans is an issue, but it's a half-truth. It's a 5% part of the truth. The other 95% part of the extent and the enormity of child rights violations that we are seeing happen with our children. There's also a massive child traffickers network, which will be as nicely dressed and as well-spoken to come and adopt the child.
The children, mostly from marginalized communities or in difficult circumstances, are in danger of falling right into the hands of traffickers looking to exploit them for profit.
We'll be going to the SDM office. From there, teams will be divided and they will be going to each point.
Dhananjay Tingal and his team are at the Subdivisional Magistrate's office to seek the permission and support of the district administration and the police to conduct a rescue operation.
सुनो भाई, आप एक मिनट। एसआई राजेंद्र जी कहाँ हैं? भाई एसआई राजेंद्र जी कहाँ हैं?
कौन सी गाड़ी में क्या जा रहे हो?
सब नंबर लिखा है सर। 1 2 3
1 नंबर टीम वाले मेरे साइड में आ जाओ।
जहाँ उतरोगे
उठाओ सबको।
सर और एक और
A pre-raid recce by BBA's investigators has revealed that a criminal gang has trafficked some children and made them work illegally in a garment factory in Silampur in East Delhi.
These are some hot spots which we have identified before also, and they are the basically sweatshops where the children work. And so we have identified almost about 30 children, and there are 4 separate locations where we are going to conduct a rescue operation with the help of the SDM and the police, local administration. तो आज कोई अपॉइंटमेंट मत फिक्स करना।
काम चलो बस।
ठीक है।
काम से सीधे उड़ के वो
मैंने उसको भी बोल दिया है, सौरभ
होते हुए
कौशल जी से बात होगी। There are 4 buildings nearby. So one, the person who have identified, they will be taking the team. Wherever we are able to find the employer or traffickers, we will be getting them arrested.
The operation requires meticulous planning. The investigators work undercover and with extreme caution to ensure that things go as planned. But despite safeguards, every rescue mission carries the risk of going awry.
Anything can go wrong. Our BBA team has been attacked many a times. So anything may go wrong.
It's a cognizable offence to employ a child below the age of 14 years for work. But according to the 2011 census, 10 million of India's 260 million children were found to be child labourers. During the pandemic, that number has increased owing to a worsening of the poverty crisis. And with the closure of schools, more children from poor families have been forced to work.
These millions of children who happen to be taken into the vortex of child labor and exploitative situation, they are actually trafficked children. The government of India would like us to believe that there are about maybe 10 million children who happen to be in that situation. But then all these children who are on the move, all these children who happen to be in various shelters, various homes, coming through child lines, traveling on railways, I mean, they are in millions and millions, are vulnerable for being trafficked or are being trafficked.
एक दिल्ली से आया सेठ, बोलता भट्टे पैसा कम मिलेगा, दिल्ली में पैसे ज़्यादा मिलेगा, उनको लालच में हम लोग को भेजा गया था।
10-year-old Roshan was duped by a trafficker to leave his home in Bihar and work in a bangle factory in Delhi for a monthly wage of $30 to $40. The loss of livelihoods during the pandemic forced his parents to borrow from moneylenders. And the little boy has had to shoulder the responsibility of repaying the debt.
जब चूड़ी के काम पे बैठे, सुबह से 8 से लेकर रात के 11 बजे तक काम करते थे, तब केमिकल्स पूरा मेरा मुंह जला हुआ था। एक बार मैंने भागने के लिए कोशिश करा, लॉकडाउन के कारण मैं नहीं भाग पाए। दे दिन प्रयास के भैया पुलिस लेके आया, तब फैक्ट्री चूड़ी के फैक्ट्री में से हम लोग को बाहर निकाला, प्रयास में लाया, प्रयास में रहे।
अगर 10 से 15 मिनट या 5 मिनट हमारा एक्स्ट्रा हो जाता तो उस स्लम एरिया में ये चीज़ें फैल जाती तो उन बच्चों को बचाना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता। बना ली ना, वीडियो बना ली? हाँ। एक जना राजू यही खड़ा है, यही रहियो सर, देख लो मैं बना दे, यही रहियो। ठीक है सर, ठीक है। सबको बना लेंगे सबको।
Vishal Kumar runs the child helpline at Prayas, an NGO based in Delhi. He led the team that raided the Bangle factory and rescued 45 children, including Roshan.
5 से 7 साल की उम्र के बच्चे हैं जो वो चूड़ी बना रहे थे, तो चूड़ी बनाने के साथ साथ वो कुछ ऐसे केमिकल जो काफ़ी हानिकारक थे उनके साथ वो उनका इस्तेमाल करते हुए उसको चिपकाने के लिए, चूड़ियों को चिपकाने के लिए एक ही पोजीशन पे लगातार 10 से 12 घंटे काम कर रहे थे।
तो फिर हम चूड़ी के काम पे आए, तो फिर काम पे बैठे ना तो हाथ और पूरा थक गया था। तब खाना लेट मिलता था, 4 बजे खाना, तो हम लोग पूरा पैर थका हुआ था, मैंने भूल नहीं पाता था, नहीं दुकान जा पाता था।
The year has seen a greater demand for child labour as factory owners hired cheap labour to cover their financial losses. Worryingly, employers make children work long hours but skimp on wages.
सेठ जी बोलता था महीना में 3000 रुपया भेजते थे, तो मैं जब फ़ोन करके मेरे घर पे पूछता था कितना पैसा आया, तो बोलता है 2000 रुपया आता।
The number of children in debt bondage has grown alarmingly during the pandemic. Roshan is among the uncounted thousands of children trafficked and forced to work as bonded labourers.
This entire issue of children being impacted by COVID, we are looking at a sea of broken children. If there was ever a time for us to come together as a community, as humanity, as especially for our children who are most vulnerable, I think the time is now. If we don't understand this now, we perhaps as humanity would never understand what our children need.
हम लोग उस्मानपुर वाले रोड से आ रहे हैं। ठीक है, ठीक है।
When it comes to a raid, there's no room for mistakes. To get it right, Dhananjay and his team have to move swiftly but carefully for the safety of the children they are fighting to rescue.
हम लोग 2, 3, 4 आ गए। इधर आ, इधर। कहाँ है?
The team's entry is creating a buzz, and word is getting around that the police are in the neighbourhood.
एक साथ अभी।
The split-up teams work full steam ahead, but one child is trying to get away.
कौन सी जगह जाना है आपको? तो जाओ ना पहले वहाँ पे यार, कहाँ पे हो? कौन सा? बगल वाली?
The mission is fraught with challenges, as the trafficker keeps moving kids in small batches away from the police's grasp.
मास कहाँ है बेटा?
मना कर रहा तो भाई तुम नहीं आए हो।
कहाँ से आए हो?
हम तो अपने मामू के पास।
कहाँ मामा कहाँ है?
कोई
क्या करते हैं?
तुम
कहाँ से घूमने? कहाँ से घूमने आए हो बेटा? कहाँ पे हो? कुछ नहीं होगा बेटा।
देखिए क्या बदबू है, कैसे बच्चे काम करते हैं।
The garment units are scattered across the congested lane. The rescue team is closing in on children inside one of the other buildings.
हो गई 8 तो यही हो गए। ये आया छत पर, यहाँ से इसमें आया है ना। हाँ मैं घुसूंगा, आप इशारा मत करिए। वो देखिए दोनों है ना, हम कवर कर लेते हैं।
यहाँ पे बच्चे काम कर रहे थे and they have been now taken out from here. 12 children have been found working, whom we have taken out, and some other place like this one, in this building also. There are some children who were seen from here. Like this child is coming out.
So far, 20 children have been found and rescued, but there are no signs of the trafficker or the employer. The people rounded up are refusing to divulge the details, and the team's patience is wearing thin.
किसका कारखाना है ये? इधर आओ। ये किसका ऊपर? चलो जितने फालतू लोग हट जाओ।
चलो सब लोग जाओ, सब लोग यहाँ से।
हट जाओ यहाँ से, चलो।
चलो सब लोग जाओ यहाँ से।
तुम लोग को साले लपड़ियाँ देना, दिमाग नहीं होता। बात करते हो। अगर पता नहीं बताओगे तो सामान नीचे नहीं आएगा और हो जाएगा सील। फिर चिल्लाना कि हमने नहीं बताया। बता दो क्या नाम है उसका? इलियास नाम है।
A stern warning is all it takes for the factory workers to disclose the names of the employer and the owner of the building.
नहीं काम करो, लेकिन छोटे बच्चों से थोड़ी कराओगे। सैंपल ले लो ये। कौन? आपका नाम क्या है? बुलाना रमेश जी को। रमेश जी नीचे आइए। इधर आइए ना। करके आप चलिए।
With the offenders rounded up, the team prepares to send the children off for interrogation.
अशोक जी, मैडम आप बच्चों को लीजिए। सुनो, कहाँ से रहने वाले बेटा आप लोग? इधर तो स्कूल जाते थे?
ये है ना CN 1758।
You feel good that you have worked with Save the Life of a Child. 20 children were rescued today. Children were working in the garment sector. Out of 20, there are 2 girls who have also been rescued. And the age group of children is between 14 to 17 years. It was a good raid, and in fact, it was good satisfaction because this was an area where raid has been successful for a long time. Generally, there were a lot many information which used to get leaked, but this time it was not leaked, and we were able to successfully rescue the children. And so it was a good day. Buildings were sealed, traffickers have been arrested.
In India, the closure of 1.5 million schools due to the pandemic has impacted 247 million children enrolled in elementary and secondary schools. Girls are at greater risk of being deprived of their education. 10 million girls could drop out of school, according to a Right to Education Forum policy brief, rolling back progress on girls' education.
In the first wave, we had started to hear reports of children dropping out, getting into labor, and that they were dropping out because they were not being able to access online education. Now, after a year, there are children who have never been to school for a whole year, and they will never perhaps go back to school.
अब इसके लिए अब तो पढ़ाई तो छोड़ ही दिया है। अब कुछ हाथ में पैसे वैसे हो, काम ना करना पड़े, इसके लिए पापा ना कुछ जमा करके गए, ना कुछ हमारे नाम करके गए। तो हम सोचे कि हमारा तो सपना अब टूट गया, तो अब जुड़ेगा कैसे? हमने उठाया नहीं, फिर सपना हमने छोड़ दिया ऐसे।
13-year-old Pooja lost her father last year to COVID. He was the household's sole breadwinner. His death left the family of 5 bereft and economically crippled.
कि किराया कैसे दिलाएंगे, बच्चे कैसे खाएंगे, कैसे अच्छा से रहेंगे। मेरे इतना दिल में शौक है कि बच्चे पढ़ाए, लेकिन मेरे सोचे हुए मनोकामना पूरा नहीं होती।
Pooja's mother was unable to pay the rent, which had piled up to over $300. It was when Pooja decided that she would help her mother and start working to bring in some additional income. Unfortunately, it meant that she had to drop out of school.
कंटिन्यू करूँगी, अगर कर भी लेती हूँ, अगर मैं सीख भी जाती हूँ उस काम को, तो हमें आगे जाके अच्छी सी सैलरी मिलेगी, हम किसी को और हेल्प कर सकते हैं। अगर हम नहीं करते हैं तो हम ना, ये थोड़ी सी तनख्वाह में हमारा क्या होगा। इसलिए हम ये चाहते हैं कि कंटिन्यू करेंगे, फिर बहुत टाइम लगेगा हमें सीखने में और करने में, पढ़ने में।
Around 1.6 million girls aged 11 to 14 years are currently out of school. The pandemic could disproportionately impact these girls. One of the immediate fallouts is girls being forced to become child brides. Each year, over 1 million girls under 18 get married in India, which makes it home to the largest number of child brides in the world, accounting for a third of the global total. Between June and October 2020, child marriages reportedly saw a spike by more than 33% compared to the same period in 2019. The worsening of poverty during the pandemic meant that more girls became liabilities for poor families. Marrying the girls off and sending them away with their husbands meant less mouths to feed.
जब मुझे सगाई के लिए बोला गया था तभी मैंने मना कर दिया था कि मुझे अभी नहीं करनी है, क्योंकि मुझे पढ़ाई करनी थी और मैं फ़ुटबॉल खेलती थी, मुझे फ़ुटबॉलर बनना था और मुझे आईएएस की प्रिपरेशन कर रही हूँ मैं, तो मुझे उसकी भी घर वालों को बोल दिया था कि मुझे पढ़ाई करनी है अभी।
The Gujar community in Ajmer, Rajasthan, believes that girls ought to get married very young, but these girls are bent on fighting that custom. The group marriage of the three sisters was set to be held on May 2nd this year. It was to minimize expenses as all the daughters could be married together in a single ceremony. But Sapna, Suman and Monica vehemently opposed it.
लड़कियों की शादी इसलिए शायद तक तो इसलिए ही करते हैं क्योंकि उन्हें लगता है कि वो बोझ बन जाएगी और लड़कियां होती ही मतलब पराया धन है तो उन्हें भेज देना चाहिए, इसलिए उनकी शादी कर दी जाती है।
Encouraged by the sisters, their neighbour Pinky Gujar refused to be cowed down by tradition. She's hell-bent on carving out her own identity and, like the sisters, dreams of becoming a professional footballer.
और मतलब मेरा कहना है कि लड़की जब तक खुद के सपने पूरा न करे और ना ही अपने पैरों पे खड़ा तब तक कोई शादी नहीं करनी चाहिए। और मतलब हमारे लिए ये है कि मतलब इम्पोर्टेंट ये शादी नहीं है, हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है हमारे सपनों को पूरा करना, अपने पैरों पे खड़ा होना, समाज की सेवा करना।
लड़कियों की शादी इसलिए जल्दी नहीं करनी चाहिए तो लड़कियों की पढ़ाई भी छूट जाती है और एक वो जल्दी जाती है तो फिर जल्दी प्रेग्नेंट हो जाती है तो उनका पूरा मतलब शारीरिक विकास नहीं हो पाता है।
मतलब ऐसा होता है मतलब मान लो अभी मेरी पढ़ाई चल रही है और अगर मेरी शादी हो जाए तो मैं तो खुद भी एक बच्चा हूँ और मतलब ऐसा है कि शादी होने के बाद में एक बच्चे को जन्म देगी तो ना तो वो खुद अस्पुष्ट रह सकेगी ना उसका बच्चा से हेल्थ से अच्छा रह सकेगा।
Amidst the doom and gloom of COVID-19, the story of the girls offers a glimmer of hope. But But for many of India's children, the pandemic-induced troubles are putting them in harm's way.
बेटा तुम अंसारी हो, शेख हो, क्या हो? अंसारी.
This makes the work of activists at BBA important and timely. In Delhi, they have just completed a successful raid and managed to rescue 20 children holed up in a garment manufacturing unit.
For us, any suffering to any exploitation, any suffering of a child is our lowest point. Our biggest challenge is we are not able to reach out to all the children who are being trafficked and who are being exploited.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हाँ बढ़िया, तेरा बढ़िया। बोले मैं तो तबीयत। हाँ।
Following his miraculous rescue, trafficking survivor Shabuddin has been spending time at BBA's shelter for boys. He hopes to return soon to his family in Bihar.
एक बच्चा मुक्त होता है तो मैं खुद मुक्त हो जाता हूँ। तो उस बच्चे को हम लोग देखते हैं तो बहुत परेशान होता है कि अब क्या होगा, पुलिस मुझे जेल भेज देगी। जैसे ही काउंसलिंग होती है, उसको अच्छा खाना मिलता है, पूरा उसका फेस बदल जाता है।
Shah's rescue is just the tip of the iceberg. He may go back home, but it's important to ensure that he does not slip back into a situation that makes him vulnerable to trafficking again. But for now, there's relief for the little boy as he reunites with his family.
घर की याद आ रही है, अच्छी नहीं लग रही, यहाँ पर मन नहीं लगता है मुझको। मैं अपना घर जाऊंगा। भाई बहन से मिलेंगे, भाई बहन से अस्सलाम वालेकुम करेंगे, अच्छे होना, क्या दिक्कत है, ये सब परेशानी दूर करेंगे। तब फिर हल्का परूर लेंगे, 18 साल बाद उम्र बाद तब दिल्ली आएंगे।